All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Um, we are going to go ahead and get started. So today's training is on the courses section of DAISI. Just a few norms and expectations before we get started. Please keep your microphone on mute for the duration of the training. It should already be on mute, so just make sure that you don't accidentally click the unmute button for yourself. If you have any questions or you're having trouble hearing me or you're not seeing what you think you should be seeing, then you can type that into the chat. And this training will be recorded and posted to the ICCB playlist of the ICSPS YouTube channel, which I am posting a link to in the chat. And lastly, we are actually going to be doing some practice today, so make sure that you have your login information handy if it already isn't. Today, we're going to be reviewing two basic functionality pieces of the courses section. We're going to be reviewing how to add a course and how to search for a course. And then we're going to review something a little bit more specific because it's been a big topic lately within ICCB. We're going to review how to correctly input bridge and ICAPS or IET data into DAISI. And then we're going to do some independent practice searching for those courses and those students on your own to make sure that they are labeled correctly within your own data. So next, we are going to be working with DAISI. So I'll go ahead and pull this up. So when you log into DAISI, this is the screen that you should see. And we're going to just select the name so that we get onto that V2 DAISI screen. And in order to add a course, you select the second option under the Courses tab labeled Add Course. And this page is pretty self-explanatory, as in the other pages, like the Add Students page and the Add Classes page. You fill out all of the information labeled with a red asterisk because it won't let you save unless you do. But there are a couple things that I wanted to highlight on this page. So I've had a lot of questions about this course code field. So both the course code and the course name fields are actually, they're really up to you. So the course code is something that most programs already have a sort of taxonomy for. So I've seen a lot of programs use either ABE or ESL as the first three characters so that you can immediately see what instructional category the course is. And then they'll just add a number after that to give the course a unique code so that it's unique from all of the other courses. And then the course name is simply something that describes what the course is. So if this were an ESL course, I might put something like English composition or something like that. So these two courses are completely up to you, and they are designed to help you find the course that you are looking for easily. Now this PCS and zip code is a little bit different. So the PCS zip code is a 6-digit code that should come from your course approval form. And it's really important that you enter it exactly as it's shown because it actually helps us as ICCB staff figure out what kind of course it is based on this code. So the code is always formatted in the same exact way, the same way that a social security number is always 3 digits and then 2 digits and then 4 digits. The PCS zip code is always 2 digits, a dot, and then 4 digits. So unless the code that you're looking at is formatted in this exact way, it's not the PCS zip code that you're looking for. And if you have trouble finding it, feel free to either reach out to me or Jane and we can help you out with that. You can also find examples of a PCS zip code in Section 7 of the AEFL Provider Manual. All right. And then a final note that I wanted to make on this page is some combinations of the instructional categories and the miscellaneous categories are not allowed. So For example, if you try to enter Voc and any of these miscellaneous categories, DAISI won't allow you to save the course. So thankfully, it will give you an error message that's pretty specific about that. So I recommend just reviewing the error messages that you're receiving carefully, and you should be able to figure out how to fix it on your own. All right, are there any questions about specifically adding a course? Okay, I don't see any questions, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the list feature. And this list feature works in the same way as the other list features, such as the student list search feature and the classes and the instructors. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I've actually already made a video on this feature, and I'll post that link to the chat. So you can go ahead and check that out if you have any additional questions. But some additional notes that I want you to see on this page that I didn't mention in the video is that you are able to search across fiscal years by selecting this button and then selecting the All Fiscal Years category. And by doing this, you'll actually be able to see all of the courses in your entire system. So it looks like there are 36 courses entered in DAISI. And this note here at the bottom is erroneous. It shouldn't say in 2021, it should say overall. And another thing that I wanted to just make a note of at the point that this training is being recorded, might be fixed in the future if you're watching this as a recording, but this bridge course search feature doesn't work exactly as it should right now. So if you select the bridge course criteria and then you select yes, unless you also fill out these two drop-down menus, it won't give you bridge courses. It'll actually just give you a list of all of the courses in your program. So unfortunately, right now, if you plan on using this bridge course search feature, you have to fill out all of the criteria. And we're working on getting it to a point where you can leave these two criteria blank and it'll still give you a list of all of the bridge courses. Are there any questions about the list search feature before I move on? Okay, I don't see any. So we are going to move on to the next portion, and I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen. The reason that we are working specifically on Bridge and IET courses during this training is because it is required by ICCB policy for every provider to offer at least one Bridge or IET course to students or program to students. And so I'm going to open up a poll, and I want you to be completely honest. There's no penalty for this or anything. I'm not doing this as like a gotcha and like I'm going to go like I don't know, like tell regional support to come and badger you about this or anything. It's just to kind of get information. So I'm going to open up this poll, and there are two questions. The first question is, does your program offer a Bridge or IET program? And the second question is, are the students in that Bridge or IET program labeled correctly? So it looks like the majority of participants do have a Bridge or IET program, which is awesome. As for whether or not students are labeled correctly, we have kind of a mix. So there are about a quarter of participants who are really confident that they are, which is great. And there are a few, about another fifth or so said, I'm not sure. So that's what we're here for. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again, and we're going to review how to correctly label a Bridge and IET course. So we're going to start with a Bridge course. So we're going to go back to the Add Course page. And you can, of course, do this for an existing Bridge course as well. If you just search for the course that you want to change, and then you select it, then it'll bring up all of the information and you should be able to edit it here. And The way that you label a bridge course as a bridge course is really simple. You just go to this bridge course section in the courses page and then select yes. And then fill out all of this information. So whether it's a course that's part of a series or it's just a standalone, and which career cluster it applies to. And that's it. And once you complete this step, any classes that you assign to this course will also be labeled as a bridge course. So you'll notice on the classes page, I've had a lot of questions about this. There's no section in the classes, on the class details page for you to label a course as a bridge course. You can only do it for the courses. So make sure that whichever course you are assigning that class to is labeled as a bridge course, because that's how a class is labeled as a bridge class. And someone just asked a good question. So what is the, and someone else also brought up a really good point. So the PCS zip code in this example is not labeled correctly. It should be probably look something like this, but this is just an example. Thank you for bringing that up, though. And someone asked, what's the difference between a series and a standalone? And that's something that I can get back to you with specific details on, but my understanding is that a series is a series of courses that are meant to be taken as part of the bridge course, as part of the bridge program, whereas the standalone is maybe a bridge course that can be shared amongst bridge programs. So for example, every bridge program needs to have a transitions component. So a course that teaches like resume writing and career readiness. So that would be probably a standalone so that multiple bridge programs can share that course. But that's something that I can get back to you with specific details on. Are there any other questions about how to add a bridge course or designate a course as a bridge course before we move on? Can I please say a word about what a transition course is and how it's different from a bridge? So a transition course is a course that is required as part of a bridge program. So this is all included on the bridge application dot form that you'll fill out if you'd like to add a bridge program to your program. But essentially, it's just a course that teaches those skills that are necessary to transition into a career. So an example could be resume writing or conducting interviews, professional etiquette, those kinds of things. Great. So we're going to move forward onto how to label an ICAPS or IET. Now, notice I didn't say ICAPS or IET course because there is no way to label an ICAPS or IET course. So if you have an ICAPS or IET student, you actually have to label that on a student level. And the way you do that is you come to the student section, select the student that you want to designate as an IET student, and select the student's status page. And all the way at the bottom, there are these 4 different designations that you can select from. There's STAR student, ICAPS, and ESLTP. And unfortunately, this is only labeled as ICAPS, and that's a big misconception. So this is ICAPS or IET. I know they're a little bit different, but if a student is an ICAPS or an IET student, select yes. Select the date that they are entering into the ICAPS or IET program, whether or not they've exited the ICAPS yet. And you'll want to select the career pathway and the occupational focus of the program. So, for example, that could be health science, and then CNA or something to that effect. So this is a really important step because historically, the reporting of IET and ICAPS students has been very low. So it's really important that if you do have IET or ICAPS students in your program that you're completing this step. I know it's a little tedious, but unless you complete these steps, we have no idea what we have no idea how many students that you have at your program. And I see someone asked, what is ESLTP? I don't know what every letter stands for, but it's Early School Leavers, and then I forget what the T stands for, program. And if you want more details about that specifically, you can shoot me an email and I can get you back to that. Oh, Early School Leavers Transition Program. Thank you for help from the audience. And then we got another question in the chat about this. Is there a way to go past fiscal years and enter the student into ICAPS and IET? So if that's a question about changing data from previous fiscal years, unfortunately, there's no way to do that because fortunately, there's no way to change data in previous fiscal years because it's frozen. And no, you do not need to label a bridge student as they are noted as a bridge student by their enrollment in the course. Great. So next, we are going to move on to the independent practice portion of this. I'm going to give you all a few minutes, and I would like you to use the search feature in DAISI to find the number of bridge students and the number of IET students at your program. And I want you to ask yourself, does it seem accurate? Or, as in most cases, does it seem a little low? All right, so it seems like most people have finished, or I assume are almost finished. So now I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to do one more poll. So the question is, does the number of a bridge or IET and ICAPS students in DAISI seem accurate? And if it does, then you can select that. If it doesn't, do you need help or do you feel like you can finish it on your own? Or were you unable to complete the search for whatever reason? All right, and we're going to go ahead and close that poll and move on. And as you should be able to see on your screen, it looks like about 40% of people feel confident that the number of Bridge and IET students is accurate, which is great. And then there are about 7% of people that don't feel like it's accurate, but most of those people feel like they can correct it themselves. And then there were about a quarter of people who couldn't complete the search, probably because of the view that they have in DAISI. So if you are one of the people that feels like you might need a little more support in this area, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to walk you through the process of labeling students as Bridge or IET students because this is really important data for us to have as a program. And that was all that I had for you all today. So as always, if you would like any additional support, you're free to visit the online help guide. That's iccb.org/daisy/. If you have any technical questions or are experiencing any system malfunctions, you can reach out to daisysupport@cate.org. And any general and policy-related questions can either be directed to me or your regional support staff.